municipality, Bob Robichaud, warning preparedness meteorologist from the Canadian Hurricane Centre, Peter Gregg, President and CEO of Nova Scotia Power, Troy Webb, Acting Executive Director of Maintenance and Operations for Public Works, Bill Lawler, Director of Government Relations for the Canadian Red Cross, Erica Fleck, Assistant Chief Emergency Management, Halifax Fire and Emergency, and Jason Mew, Director of Incident Management Division, Nova Scotia Emergency Management Office. Many of our participants have joined us today with updates and information to share this afternoon. We'll start off by hearing from Premier Tim Houston. Go ahead, Premier.
Thank you, Marla. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, certainly Fiona has come and left its mark on Nova Scotia as well as our neighboring provinces, and this is a storm that will certainly not be forgotten anytime soon. And as the storm continues along its path, damage assessments are already well underway, and I can tell you our situation right now is where none of us want it to be. And I dread to think of where we would be had Nova Scotians not taken every single possible precaution to protect themselves and their families. Right now, I'm in rural Pictou County, and I can tell you what I've seen just in the last couple hours. I had a chance to go out with a few public works team this morning, and obviously no power, spotty if anything, cell and internet service. Roads washed out, including my own, an incredible amount of trees down, and not just power lines across the roads. In many cases, entire power poles down, snapped in half. And I know this is common across the province right now, especially in Cape Breton area. I'm hearing from Glace Bay where entire streets have every single telephone or every single power pole down. So seeing pictures across the province of the damage, and it's pretty devastating. The sad reality is that the people who need the information that most of the team, most of the folks on this call today can share are unable to hear it. Their phones aren't working. They don't have power or access to the internet. So I want to assure you that working together, we have to do everything we can to make sure that we communicate with the people that need the information. But please know that everyone you will hear from today, and the teams of people who are out there cutting trees, clearing roads, trying to get things restored and get safe passage through. Every one of those people is completely dedicated to working as quickly as humanly possible to get to you, to get things back to normal. It certainly appears that the heaviest impacts are in Cape Breton. I certainly encourage everyone in the CBRM and Victoria County specifically to stay off the roads. Only call 911 if you truly have an emergency situation. I know from the people I've been talking to around the province, and certainly in that area, I hear a lot of shock in their voices, and I share that. It's shocking the damage that we're seeing. Restoring power is the biggest concern for everyone right now. We have nearly 3/4 of Nova Scotia Power customers without power. I know those teams are. There was a lot of staging work done in advance, and we'll hear more from them on the work that's being done there. But we've been in regular contact with the utility, with their crews, and there's a lot of work happening to restore power in the areas, and as it's safe to do so, or if that will happen. But we're supporting their efforts with our forestry crews, provincial forestry crews, to help clear trees and debris so line workers can do their jobs. The safety of these workers is, of course, the top priority, and I want to thank everyone who is out in this weather doing their best to get things back to normal as quickly as possible. But with a storm of this magnitude, it will take time. To help speed up these efforts, we have been in contact with our federal partners and have requested military and disaster assistance. So I have to send a huge thank you to our friends in Ontario who have been instrumental in sending support. An official request for aid has been made, and we have more support and more workers on the way. As the storm passes through their areas, most municipalities intend to open comfort centers where people can charge their devices and get updates, and some are already opening shelters. For the locations and operating hours, people should check with their local municipality for the most up-to-date information. But again, I want to emphasize the seriousness of the storm. It's not completely over in some areas, and it will take time for Nova Scotia to recover. I just ask everyone for their patience as we work through all the challenges. Do the Nova Scotia thing, the Blue Noser thing, and take care of each other. Check on your neighbors, offer what you can to help. We will get through this. We will recover for this, but I want to thank everyone for their patience and their efforts today. Thank you, Marla.
Thank you very much, Premier. Next, we'll move to the Honourable John Lohr, Minister responsible for Nova Scotia's Emergency Management Office. Go ahead, Minister.
Well, thank you, Marla, and thank you, Premier. And I want to echo your words of appreciation and just the magnitude of this storm has just been breathtaking. It has turned out to be everything that has been predicted, and it's affected people across the province. I've been here most of the day, or nearly all day, at the Provincial Emergency Measures Coordination Center, and just so impressed with everybody here who's working so hard. It's a level 3 response for us, all hands on deck, and this building is full, and I know our emergency responders around the province are just working very hard. Our municipalities are working very hard. Our fire service, our first responders, they're all working hard to get to everybody and to meet the needs. And I know Public Works is as well through reaching out and working on the roads. I've been in contact today with many of our partners. I've had a conversation with the Federal Minister, Bill Blair, Public Safety, and we've reached out to him and asked, we've given notice that we will be asking for disaster financial assistance, and he's assured us that will be coming very quickly. I really appreciate that. And also that request to the Minister, as the Premier mentioned, for military assistance. We had military assistance during Dorian, and it was invaluable. This storm is on the magnitude or maybe larger than Dorian, and we know we will need it now to help get power connected back up to everyone. So, we also recognize that this has hit, as the storm was predicted, has hit Cape Breton very hard, and we know that there's 2 local municipalities there that have states of emergency, Victoria County and CBRM. We recognize that, and we will be moving resources there as quickly as we can to help them. So to the Mayor of CBRM, our thoughts and prayers are with you and all the many people in your community who have been so severely affected. So we're doing all we can. I do want to recognize too that it's impacted other jurisdictions. The PEI and Newfoundland and the Magdalen Islands have also been severely hit too. So our thoughts and prayers are with them as well. So so thank you again for the opportunity. We're here working, and we want to see Nova Scotians get through this. And I look out for your neighbors as well. That's my message to you now in the aftermath of this storm. Check in on your neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Next, we'll be going to Mayor Mike Savage of the Halifax Regional Municipality. And before we do, I just want to say Mayor Amanda McDougall from Cape Breton Regional Municipality wanted very much to be here today to share some remarks. Unfortunately, like many Nova Scotians, she experienced connectivity issues today. So Mayor Savage will be sharing some remarks on her behalf as well. Go ahead, Mayor. You're on mute, Mayor.
Okay, is that coming off? We're good. Thank you, Marla, very much. Thank you, everybody. Merci à tous. Great. HRM has been hit hard. We have downed power lines, trees across the municipality. Obviously, the communications challenge that the Premier and the Minister have talked about. Cell service, Wi-Fi. We ask people to be patient. We know how tough that is without power and without communication services. We've had an apartment building roof collapse. 100 people have had to move out, evacuated to a comfort center. Erica Fleck, who's on the call, and I are just asking people to be mindful of those who are in more difficult shape than yourself. So as we move 100 people into a comfort center, we ask people to be patient, trying to charge their cell phones, things like that. We have trees on cars. Our shelters are full. We've moved a lot of people who are unhoused through buses and taxis with the provincial government. We've moved them to centers where they have warmth and where they have food and water. We've opened up other areas to accommodate the overflow. Our transit services have been suspended for the remainder of the day. You may have seen that our bridges, harbor bridges, have reopened. So far, I think we're grateful that we haven't had a lot of reports of injury or loss of life. And you're always careful about saying that as you assess the damage, but so far, we're grateful. I want to thank all the folks who are working on this at HRM, at the province, at EMO, the service agencies. I want to thank Nova Scotia Power, the people who are out in this weather, working hard, emergency services, Halifax Water. You know, I wish people could see what Minister Lohr and I see in this center today. So many people from across governmental lines and across agencies working together, head down, not looking for credit, just looking to give service to our citizens. It will take a time to get us back to normal. We ask people to stay off the roads if you possibly can. Let the people do the work that are trying to serve our fellow citizens. And ultimately, I want to say our thoughts and hearts are with those who have been hit harder than us. We have had a hardship. It was a wild night in Halifax. It's going to take some time, but when I see the images from Port aux Basques, when I see what's happening in Cabreton Island and PEI, I just want to say that we're with you, and anything we can do to help, we will. Thank you to frontline workers, to volunteers, and thank you to everybody who's become an essential worker through COVID and now through this, who stock the grocery shelves and who make sure we get our prescriptions. There's a lot of people we don't think of as essential who are. I want to thank everybody for their patience as we deal with this circumstance. And I do want to read a note that Mayor McDougall has sent, and I'll just read it verbatim, Marla, before I go back to you. From Mayor Amanda McDougall, the last 24 hours have at times felt surreal. We are still very much in the thick of the hurricane, with wind speeds maintaining significant levels and our crews on the ground trying to triage emergency situations and take care of our neighbors in need. Power outages are vast, cell phone service is now unreliable, and travel around the region hazardous. The downed lines, trees, flying debris, and the sheer number of people in need of support is why we have declared a state of local emergency in the CBRM. We are unable to activate all comfort centers we had intended because of damage to sites, live wires, and the fact that many of our center volunteers are first responders who have been on the ground since Fiona hit. We have an updated list of centers that will open shortly, but ask the public to please wait until we give the green light that they are ready to operate. We are steadily moving up in the hundreds of people that have been displaced because of the storm. Remarkable, there have been no injuries that have come out of the hurricane so far. We're working with our provincial and federal counterparts to move to a larger facility to house evacuees. I cannot thank Minister Lohr, MPs Batiste and Callaway enough for their rapid response to our call for help. We will get through this. I know the crews of power line workers are here and ready to kick into action. Fiona is really testing us by lingering, but she will not keep us down. Thank you to my staff who have not stopped since Fiona was spotted, our emergency management team, my council, and above all, the community. The only way through this is together, and it's inspiring to see our community band together to help each other through. Thank you, Mayor Mike, for being a kind friend and a supportive colleague. That's from Mayor Amanda McDougall, and again, our hearts and thoughts are with all those people who have been hit by this hurricane. Thank you very much, Marla.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mayor McDougall, for sharing that note with us. I will note when we do go to questions, we have Christina Lamy here from Cape Breton Regional Municipality, who is happy to take some questions directed towards Cape Breton. We'll continue through remarks now. Next up is Bob Robichaud with the Canadian Hurricane Centre. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Marla. Good afternoon, everyone. Je vais aussi préciser que s'il y a des questions en français, que je peux prendre des questions en français par la suite. Just a brief update on Fiona, what we saw last night and what we're seeing right now. The storm was declared post-tropical right around midnight Atlantic time, and then subsequently made landfall in Guysborough County sometime between 3 and 4 a.m. before it crossed Cape Breton, and is located right now about 100 kilometers to the southwest of Port aux Basques in Newfoundland and Labrador. Wind speeds are still quite strong. We're still seeing gusts into warning criteria, which is over 90 kilometers per hour in parts of northern mainland Nova Scotia and Cape Breton as well. I was just looking at Sydney before we came on here, and they've started to come down. Their winds have started to come down gradually. They're gusting to about 80 now, compared to much stronger, obviously, earlier today. Conditions should gradually improve over the next 3 to 6 hours, but it's still going to be fairly gusty into the evening hours. But certainly tomorrow looks like a better day across the entire province of Nova Scotia. In terms of rainfall, we did see between 100 and 150, maybe even a little bit more than 150 north of Truro. And in terms of coastal flooding, we have had reports of some coastal flooding, but some of those reports are actually still coming in as a result of some of the communication challenges that we've had. So that's it for now, Marla.
Thank you very much, Bob. Next up is Peter Gregg, President and CEO of Nova Scotia Power. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you, Marla. So Fiona continues to impact communities right across this province. We've seen significant wind, and as Bob just mentioned, we still do see some remaining significant wind in parts of the province, and peak winds that we really haven't seen before in the province. And so as a result, damage has been widespread and severe. We've seen healthy trees uprooted. We've got hundreds of broken poles that we've been able to identify so far, and we're expecting to find more as we continue to complete our damage assessment. There are also hundreds of full-size trees and branches that have come down and are impeding access to many parts of the province. So in many areas, weather conditions, as I said, are still too dangerous for our crews to get up in our bucket trucks. With winds of over 80 kilometers an hour, it isn't safe for them to be up there. But I want to assure you that they're still busy. We have lots of crews removing wires from cars and roads and responding to 911 calls. And we continue to assess the damage and do everything we can to be ready to go when the winds drop and allow our crews to safely get back up there. In the western region, as an example, our crews were able to start restoring power overnight as the wind speed started to drop. I'm pleased to report that we've restored power to over 60,000 customers so far during this storm, while there still remains approximately 380,000 customers without power. In the metro area, winds are now starting to be below 80 kilometers an hour, meaning our crews will be able to safely start making more progress with restoration throughout the day today and tomorrow. I know there's been some focus on Cape Breton, and I also want to focus there. Based on the information we've been getting from our damage assessors in the field, Cape Breton is seeing extremely extensive damage. As a result, we are opening a satellite emergency operations center in Sydney today. This will be the second command center, very much like our EOC here in Halifax, where I am today, where we continue to coordinate plans and resources for the province. And moving forward, while we have seen some improvement in the weather in some parts of the province, winds remain above warning levels. That's in the Eastern Shore, northeastern Nova Scotia, and Cape Breton. So I want to reiterate, this is still an active storm in many parts. We have now over 900 power line technicians, forestry technicians, and damage assessors in the field, and hundreds more working behind the scenes to support our customers and crews. And if we need more resources, we will not hesitate to reach out. In fact, we're having conversations with many of our neighbors right now. We continue to talk to our neighboring utilities, and we have more crews on the way from far away as Ontario and Maine. Unfortunately, given the dangerous condition for our crews and the widespread damage, there will be customers who will see outages for multiple days. I want to reiterate that. We'll get at the restoration as quickly and safely as we can, but recognizing the damage we're seeing, I want to say there will be outages for multiple days. We understand how challenging and frustrating that is for our customers, and I want our customers to know that we're working to restore power as quickly as we can, as soon as it is safe to do so. And while I'm on safety, I also want to remind people there are a number of downed power lines across this province. Broken poles, down power lines, please treat them as if they are energized. Even if you think the power might be off in your neighborhood, you must assume that those power lines are energized. Do not go near them, do not touch them, and please report them right away so that our crews can remove them and make safe. Thanks, Marla.
Thank you very much, Peter. Next, we'll go to Troy Webb. He's with Nova Scotia's Department of Public Works. Go ahead, Troy.
Thank you, Marla, and good afternoon, everyone. The onset of Hurricane Fiona has been, a very traumatic situation, and it's affecting a lot of people and certainly our transportation infrastructure across our province, and it's hit us hard. Many people are working to assess and repair the damage. It's difficult work, and I know that they are responding as quickly as they can to get out there, and I want to thank them for all their efforts and for all Nova Scotians for being patient as we get around and try to reopen many of the roads. Repairing all this damage, it's going to be a very big job, and the province will continue to provide updates as we progress through this phase of assessing and repairing and marking many of the hazards that we're identifying. And I'd encourage people to still try to stay off the roads. If you really have to go out, please check our 511 or on Twitter at 511NS for updates on your potential route that you may be traveling. So please continue to be safe and observe any of our signage that we do have out there. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Troy. And last but certainly not least, we'll go to Bill Lohr, Director of Government Relations for the Canadian Red Cross. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. The Canadian Red Cross remains on standby to provide support throughout the province of Nova Scotia and well beyond. And indeed, we have been providing some direct support within some of the reception centers and shelters that have been established. As has been noted by the previous speakers, in some cases, we're going to need to make some adjustments to those, either due to the power outage situation, or in some cases, particularly in Sydney area, we're reevaluating. We may need to relocate as we expect, as the storm continues to pass through, that we may have experienced some higher demands in that particular part of the province. Not just within Nova Scotia, but one thing I would like to remind and advise everyone is that the Canadian Red Cross is looking at this very holistically as one organization, as the situation merits. And we know that many of the organizations represented here today have been working tirelessly throughout since the onset of the storm. We know for us that the work is going to really begin once the wind does die down and pass through, and people start to assess their own circumstances and whether or not they're able to return to their home or what was once their home. And that will really have a higher demand on our resources. And we are positioned to provide that support, and we'll continue to do so. Anytime there's some changes to a location where we're currently located in terms of offering shelter support, we'll make sure that we're well connected and in supporting government officials, both at the provincial and municipal level, to be well informed of what's happening. And this is certainly an effort well beyond the Canadian Red Cross when it comes to communities taking care of communities. That's been our experience. And all of you know the resilience of Nova Scotians. It's been so strong for so long. In this case, as strong as it is, we know there are going to be some neighborhoods and some families who will require some extra supports due to the impacts that they have experienced. And we're quite ready to provide those supports on behalf of the province and on behalf of us as an organization, as the Canadian Red Cross. It's only just begun for us, and we know that, and we're prepared for the long haul, and whatever that takes and whatever that means, that's how long we'll be there to support Nova Scotians throughout the remainder of their journey to recovery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. That concludes our speaking portion. I'll now call upon each registered reporter to ask a question and a follow-up. When I call your name, please identify who your question is for. We'll start first with CBC's Mike Gorman. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. This is for the Premier. Premier, you touched on the fact that cellular service is down for many people across the province, and that obviously creates logistical and safety problems for a lot of people. The response we're getting from providers is that they're having to go from tower to tower to turn on generators. And that's the same thing that happened in 2019 with Dorian. Is it good enough that the response now is no different than it was 3 years ago?
Well, listen, thank you for the question. And obviously the communications issues are a huge concern for myself. I mean, just trying to move around to get a signal to get on here and to communicate with the team has been a challenge all day for sure. I think there'll be lots of assessments and reflection post, once we get through this, but certainly the loss of power across the province in such a significant way has a huge impact on a number of different facets of our life right now and of the response and recovery. So as the power comes back, the communications. So when you lose it an issue, and it's an issue we'll have to look at going forward too.
Thank you very much. Mike, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I do. And I might direct it to Minister Lohr just to ensure that we get a better connection. Minister Lohr, the Premier's comments notwithstanding, we heard the same thing from Premier McNeil in 2019, that cellular providers needed to be more involved from the get-go in the lead up to ensure that this wasn't going to happen again and that people would have reliable communication service. That obviously hasn't happened this weekend. What is your government going to do to ensure that cellular service providers are as involved as possible to ensure that people have the ability to communicate as necessary in a storm like this?
Well, thank you, Michael. It's a huge concern for us as a government, and I can tell you that the major cellular service providers all have representatives here at our provincial command center. At our request, we wanted them to be here. We knew this would be an issue. We have communicated our concerns to the federal government, and as you probably realize, the regulation of cell phone providers is federally done. But it's incredibly important to us, and especially Bell, which is our 911 service provider, incredibly important that we have adequate 911 service, and certainly getting power where, we would expect there to be backup power at these towers. I think that's a minimum. But in terms of coordination with Nova Scotia Power to where we can get power to these cell towers to have better service as quickly as we can, that's a very high priority for us.
Thank you, Minister. Next, we'll go to Paul Hollingsworth with CTV. Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, it's Jesse with CTV here, filling in for Paul.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Can you hear me there? Hey there. Thanks, Marla. I just wanted to follow up on the cellular service talk. Can Minister Lohr just talk about what has caused the power outages, and are we seeing cell service coming back up, and just what's the priority there to make sure that that's set back up immediately?
Thank you, Jesse. Well, I mean, this is a massively large storm. It has affected a lot of areas. So, I mean, clearly the power going out across the province has affected the cell towers. And I mean, we're looking, it doesn't just, and I think people realize this, but many people don't. It doesn't just affect cell service. In some cases, landline phones are also tied to cell towers. And so this is something that is an area of federal government regulation. But I mean, our world is changing. We just need better coverage for 911 with our cell service. So it's something that we, in the aftermath of this, we'll certainly be looking at.
Thank you. Jesse, do you have a follow-up question?
Thank you. I'm just wondering with damage assessments, Minister Lohr, from your perspective, how long will it take to get damage assessment? And is there an early tally? And for Nova Scotia Power, the same question. How long will it take to complete the overall damage assessments from Fiona?
Well, the reality is the storm isn't even over yet. It's still hitting Cape Breton very hard right now. And the tail end of the hurricane is, or post-tropical storm, Fiona is hitting them. So it will take a few days to get damage assessments, that's for sure. And I don't think I should answer for Nova Scotia Power. I should let
I'm happy to, Minister Lohr.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Jesse. I think I mentioned before, so we've been able to complete damage assessments in the west part of the province as winds dropped, and power restoration has been underway there. We've restored power to just over 60,000 customers. As the wind has dropped in the Metro Halifax area, we've got damage assessors out in conjunction with our power line technicians, and they'll be targeting power restorations as a result of that. And as Minister Lohr said, as the storm diminishes in other parts of the province, we'll move our damage assessors in there and make sure we get a good view of what's there. Tomorrow, with the good weather, we do have some contracted helicopters that are going to allow us to get up in the air and do a quicker assessment of some of the more remote parts of the province and get a really good assessment for our crews to get in there. That's about all I can say at this point.
Great. Next we'll go to Ian Nathanson with the Cape Breton Post. Go ahead, Ian.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, message, I guess, for CBRM if Christine Lamy is online. We know that there are some emergency shelters that are being opened and some comfort centers. Do we anticipate any more as the storm diminishes, or do we have an estimate of how many in total are going to be operating?
Hi, Ian. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, the priority for emergency responders is evacuations. There are hundreds of people displaced right now. So the first step that's occurring is emergency shelter for those residents who are without a home. We're encouraging everyone who is safely sheltered to remain there. The comfort centers that can open, we are not recommending travel at this time. So unless someone is not safe in their shelter at home, they should not be traveling to any centers.
Okay. And I guess my next question would be for Nova Scotia Power. I don't know if this is, again, too soon. Do we have any estimates on what the costs were for Dorian or any possible estimated cost of the storm could be, or are we too soon to anticipate that at this point?
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, it's really too soon. We haven't been able to get in, as I mentioned before, to all the areas to assess damage. So I wouldn't want to guess at a figure at this point until we get a better sense of the details.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Amy Smart with the Canadian Press. Go ahead, Amy.
Hi there. I have a question for Bob Robichaud. I'm wondering if you can speak kind of broader about the region. Specifically, why is Fiona proving so destructive in Port aux Basques even ahead of the storm's full arrival in Newfoundland?
Well, the stronger winds the strongest winds associated with the storm were always going to be just to the right and just to the kind of southeast corner of the storm. So with the storm track the way it is, that puts southwestern parts of Newfoundland and Labrador right in that area of some of those extreme winds. The same winds that went through Cape Breton Regional Municipality in the early hours of this morning are now going through the Port aux Basques area. That, coupled with the fact that they're wide open to the incoming surf and storm surge, that's why you're seeing what you're seeing there now.
Thanks. And then I just have a question. I'm not sure for whom, but you're asking people to shelter in place. How long might people expect to do so, or what advice do you have for people who might not have supplies or power at the moment?
Who was that question for?
I'm looking broadly at the province, so perhaps the minister.
Minister Lohr, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I think that it's really a little bit unknown right now. Obviously we want to try to work to get people back in their homes as quickly as possible. There may be cases where that's not possible. We know that there are apartment buildings, I believe, both in HRM and CBRM that have been significantly damaged. So we'll be working very hard in the coming days to find places for those people to live with all our partners, I'm sure, with the Red Cross and with our whatever housing resources we have and our municipal partners. So it's just impossible to say. I mean, we want it to be as minimal amount of time as possible, but it's really unknown at this moment.
Thank you, Minister. Next, we'll go to Graham Benjamin with Global. Go ahead, Graham. Do we have Graham here from Global? Okay, let's move on to Ian Fairclough with the Chronicle Herald. Go ahead, Ian.
Thanks. First question's for Mr. Webb. You're talking about extensive damages. I'm just wondering if you can have any idea of the extent of those. Are we talking roads and bridges washed out? And if so, do we have people cut off from getting out of their homes or their communities?
Okay, thank you, Ian, for the question. We haven't experienced any major bridge damage that we've encountered as of yet. We will certainly have to conduct a review of the various routes, and particularly when the water levels recede, to give it a thorough review an assessment for any erosion damage. We will be continuing to work around some of the areas, the water levels that we're experiencing flooding, but we don't know, what is under that water until that recedes to actually determine the extent of the damage and what repairs might be required.
Ian, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, this is for Mayor Savage. Outside of that apartment building with 100 people displaced, I'm wondering if there's any idea right now of people who are displaced from other apartment buildings or their homes because there are trees on them or their power's been ripped off. Is there any idea of how many people may be displaced from their homes?
Yeah, thank you, Ian. I'm going to let Erica Fleck speak to that. She's on top of that. And I got to say, Erica has been doing an awesome job, as she always does here at the EOC, preparing us. Erica, can you speak to that?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the question. So we had 2 apartment buildings severely damaged, one in the middle of the night and one early this morning, with about approximately 160 residents, and then a few others who had to evacuate for damage. So that's where we're at right now for evacuees.
Okay, and Blake Priddle with the Hawk, I see your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yes, it's a question for Christine. What's Christine's last name again? That's not my only question, by the way, but
Christine Lamey. Christine L.
Pardon?
Lamey.
Okay, how do you spell that?
Lamey.
Okay, Christine Lamey. And what's her position?
Hi there. Communications Officer for Cape Breton Regional Municipality.
Thank you. Now, what I'd like to know is, Port Hawkesbury has, the weather's been really calm for most of the day. Would you still recommend that people stay off the roads for the time being?
Port Hawkesbury is actually not our jurisdiction. We're in Sydney. Currently in Sydney, the wind is still probably at 80 kilometers an hour. Hazards are still underway and none of the roads are cleared. So definitely in Sydney, we do not want people out driving. I can't.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, those are all the registered reporters we have today. Thank you to all our participants. Thank you to media, and please everyone continue to stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, Mona.